morning, everyone. Hi. Hello, Miss Alfie.
Yes, good morning, Miss Shari. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, there you go. Yes, we're all excited because we have a guest this morning. So, our guest this morning is Mr. Michael Sullivan, so the owner of Fresh Start Tax LLC. He is a former IRS agent and teaching instructor with the IRS. So, work with the narcotics trafficking program at IRS and the Fax Business News contributor. So, wag na nating patagalin, guys. So, let's welcome Mr. Michael De Sullivan. Okay. Hi, Michael. Finally, we're live.
How y'all doing? Yeah, we're here. I'm ready to go to bed. You guys are just ready to have coffee.
I'm
Sorry for
really sorry.
the wait.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have a
we
bad
have
internet here.
here.
All right. So,
Right?
are you ready, Michael? Do you want to start with your presentation?
Yeah, I've actually been born ready. So yeah,
Sorry.
first of all, I want to tell you it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor anytime you can use your giftedness that God has given you to enlighten and help other people. And today, what I want to be able to do is just tell you a little about our tax system in the United States and give you some brief overview. When I got out of college, I was going to go to law school, but the Internal Revenue Service, our taxing division in the United States, hired me, and they asked me to come work for them. And I started before most of you were born. You guys weren't even a twinkle in your parents' eye when I started in 1973. I know you're going to say, "Oh, you don't look that old." I know that's the next comment you're going to say, but I'll say it for you since it didn't come out of your lips. So anyway, I've been doing this work since 1973. For 10 years, I've worked with the Internal Revenue Service under our Department of Treasury. They're the ones who makes the laws and the codes that we go ahead and follow. Yeah, I've been doing that ever since for 10 years. I was in part of the enforcement division of Internal Revenue Service. You ask, what is enforcement? Enforcement has the right to seize houses and cars and bank accounts and take things away from people if they don't pay their taxes. And I did that for 10 years. I was shot at. I had guns thrown at me. I've had my cars and tires all smashed up and beat up. But anyway, I'm still living. And then after doing that for 10 years, I decided I would go out on my own because I could make a hell of a lot more money than I did then. And everyone would be okay, and my car would make it out alive, and I'd have four sets of tires. So I did that. I learned a lot from the Internal Revenue Service. I probably have worked over 10,000 cases. I probably have interviewed over 5,000 people for the IRS and in private practice.
Yep.
So I know enough to be very dangerous. And I tell you all this with complete humility. I've been fortunate enough to be on ABC News and Fox Business News on interviews on the Trump audit and what problems IRS is having. I've been very blessed by God to have the knowledge that I have. So I always want to give that knowledge back as a part of my responsibility and gift from God to help other people. So I do come before you with complete humility. And I'm just going to tell you some of the things you need to know, and then you can ask all sorts of questions that you need to know. I want to tell you about the United States Tax Code. The United States Tax Code started a long, long time ago. And under the laws of the United States, it falls really under Title 26. All the taxing provisions are in Title 26 of the United States Tax Code. The code itself has over 1 million words. The King James Bible has over 800,000. So if you look at the U.S. tax code and you look at the Bible, the code has over, 200,000. Now, if you put all the rules, the regulations, and some of the tax court decisions, there's over 4 million pages in regulations that govern the tax. And I'm holding in front of me the Master Tax Guide. this
Wow.
master tax guy, and it's really like small print. Like if you don't have like really good glasses, this print is really, really small. And
Yes,
they
yes.
keep adding new laws and new changes, and this is how the code works. So if somebody wants to change the code because it benefits them, they'll go to a congressman and they'll lobby and they'll say, we can use a tax deduction here. So they will lobby Congress to go ahead and change the law in that area. The code started out very, very, very small. And today, with all the rules and regulations, there's 4 million pages. It's impossible to know them all. It just is. So you keep up just with your area to try to go ahead and keep up and know everything you need to know about the area you practice. There's estate taxes, there's excise taxes, there's income taxes, partnership taxes, all kinds of taxes. So what we try to do is go ahead and just specialize in one or two in the area that I'm involved in. By the way, there's income tax and business tax. I specialize in people who owe debt to the United States government. So people who owe money have different options to go ahead and deal with that. But before I get started in that, I want to talk to you about bookkeepers. I think that you guys need to know something, that your role is very, very important in what you do, probably far more important than you have any idea. Matter of fact, accountants or anybody else would not exist without the role of the bookkeeper to keep everybody organized. So you have a profession that everyone in fact needs, and you should be very proud of that profession that you have, because you're the one who manages and organizes really all the finance. And many times you'll determine whether there's a profit and a loss in a business. So don't ever think you don't have an important job. You have one of the most important jobs in a businesses. So I hope you know that. When you pick up a new client, it's very important that you have a chart of accounts, that you know where you can categorize that. So it's important that you go and understand what that chart of accounts is. And every business is different. There's not one business that may use the same chart of accounts. So you've got to be very familiar with that really unique industry. And it's important to know the industry that you're in. I'm in Florida, and part of Florida, they grow a lot of cattle. They have orange juice. They have dairy. So they have very, very specific needs. So it's very important when you're doing bookkeeping to really understand the needs and how that industry operates. So I would tell you all to do a lot of due diligence when you take on a client, so you understand when you start to categorize things, you truly are very accurate to understand where these charts of accounts go and how these expenses really play in there. And if you're picking up an older account, it's very important for you to look at the past books for a couple years to understand the flow of what you think your requirement is. And I also tell you, when you look at the past books, you should look for badges of fraud. When people come in here owing money, and I ask them what caused the problem, many times the bookkeepers stole the money. Many. I can't even tell you how many cases I've seen. And what they do is, I'll give you a perfect example. When I worked at IRS, people used to make their checks out to IRS. Well, there was a big scam that came up that one year, and that scam went ahead and they took the IRS and changed the I to an M. You can see how the I is here. Just put a couple more crosses, and that IRS turns out to Mrs. Smith. That person cashed $5.4 million worth of IRS checks, now converted to an M, and went to the bank, assumed the name of Smith, and cashed all the checks. A lot of people create false invoices. they go ahead and put people on the payroll, and they go to printing companies, and they will create 10 or 12 false companies, and they will go ahead and start writing checks to those companies, and they're actually the only signer on that. I've had a real estate company in the last 2 years, the bookkeeper stole $1.4 million from that because she was creating false invoices on that. So one of the things you want to do when you pick up a new account is look and say, does everything here make sense? And you always want to know, why did the last bookkeeper quit? What was the problem? Was there a problem with the owner, that the owner was kind of a jerk? Did the bookkeeper do back records? So anytime you go in and pick up an account from somebody, you always want to know the experience of that. If it was me, I'd call the old bookkeeper and find out why they quit. Some people are jerks. Some people want you to do things you shouldn't. A lot of owners who are kind of shady will ask you to go ahead and change books and records to reflect something. Well, I tell everyone, if you look good in stripes and you like 3 meals a day behind bars, you can do those things. You must run and flee, because when they come after the owner, he's going to point his finger at the bookkeeper and the accountant. When you see these things, run as fast as you can. So if you get a something from a past bookkeeper, if you feel okay, call. Find out why that person left. Find out about the owner. The attitude of that owner is going to make your job easy, or it's going to make it hard. And I would not just pick up any old account. I would interview the owner, because, in fact, he becomes your client, and you want to make sure you're not dealing with somebody shady. That initial meeting I would do face-to-face or by Zoom, and I would have it last for an hour, where you go ahead and you lay out expectations from that owner of what he expects from you and what you expect from that owner. How many meetings you want to have, what's on the agenda. When you meet once a month, go over it in detail. The worst thing that you can do is not talk to that owner for a while, because if there's an error and it starts spinning out of control, it gets bigger and bigger. So I would encourage monthly meetings with the owner to go over, so the owner starts to understand the books and records. Most owners don't understand where all that money's going. So you sitting down with the owner, showing where those expenses are, you're going to be very helpful, and you're going to allow that owner to have a healthy profit. Or if there's errors, you can go ahead and help him understand, hey, did you know there's a lot of expense? Did you know you're spending this much in office expense, or you're going out to dinner a lot? So your role is very, very critical. Does all this make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'll keep going. Just stop me if you want. I'll be stopping you. So I would encourage you, when you start an industry, to go ahead and Google the industry. Find out a little more about the industry. Just don't go in, because, like I said, every industry is different. But feeling out that owner is important. And I would make sure you have an electronic transmission of the owner of what your expectations are and what his are. You don't want him to say, well, I told you about this. You should send an email and say, this is what we discussed. Is there anything more you want to add? So you have a real spot on relationship with that person, because a lot of what you're going to do may determine the spending habits of that owner. Do you want to ask me any questions? Should I stop for a minute, pause? Anyone have to go to the bathroom? I'm sure there's a lot of women. You don't even have to go to the bathroom. I'm just checking. So do any you want to ask me any questions? You have to go to the bathroom, just like number 1 or 2. I'll let you go for a while.
No,
So
no, no. Do you want me to show your PowerPoint now?
no, let me just talk. I'd rather get questions. My PowerPoint is really designed. You guys all know where Las Vegas is. So I used to go to Las Vegas, and I used to give this presentation to them. We'll show it at the end, but I told you the story, and I'll tell my story real quick, so you guys all can laugh at me, and you can all tell me how stupid I was. So when I went to Las Vegas, I've talked to many industries. You go up for an hour, you do all your thing. Well, they asked me when I wanted to speak. They said you couldn't speak the first day. So I says, well, then let me speak the second day, but I want to go up first because I figure, when you're up first, people are up, they've had their coffee and they're wide awake and they're going to listen to everything what I have to say. And I'm really going to have their attention. I figured, boy, this is a shoo-in. Well, I forgot that I was speaking in Las Vegas. I knew I was going there, but I had a big mental lapse. So I don't know. The seminar had a couple hundred people the first day, and I get there the second morning, and I was the first up at 8 o'clock. There were 3 people in the room. All of them had hangovers, and 2 people in the back were throwing up. So my lesson was never go to Las Vegas and be first up. It's okay the first day, but after that, you got to go and let their hangover take over. So let me keep going a little about this, and then I'll go ahead and have you ask some questions. So anyway, you should make sure that you have good security on your end for bookkeeping. So whether you keep it in a cloud or how you keep your security based, make sure the owner knows where that is. And I asked I asked somebody here, the CPA, who's next to me. I asked him. I says, Tim, what are the 3 most important things you expect from a bookkeeper? He says accuracy, to get their records timely, and if they're not sure, they ask. I'm going to say those again because those 3 things are very, very important. That you're accurate, that you're timely, and that if you're not sure, you ask questions. That's very, very important. I'm sure you've heard that. So what I want to do is I want to tell you before I open this up to questions how IRS processes a tax return. So every year, IRS has expectations when returns are going to be filed. Usually, most people don't file their tax returns on time. They file the U.S. individual returns are filed in April. Extensions are given in October. Corporate returns in March and in September. So what happens when you get a tax return and you send it into Internal Revenue Service? They take that return. It goes into a computer staff, okay? And they go ahead and log everything in on your tax return into the system. That return at that moment is graded for an audit, in audit potential. And that's why what bookkeepers do, they're very, very important, because if expenses get out of balance and they're weighted too much, the IRS computer system, has a DIF score. It's called the DIF, D-I-F, Discriminatory Index Function Number. And they will say that this return does not make sense because according to this income, these expenses are out of balance. And when too many flags go up, then IRS says we need to look at that tax return. So IRS then goes ahead and audits those returns. But you, as a bookkeeper, can start finding out or know ahead of time if expenses are getting out of balance and notify the owner to say, boy, I don't know, is this number really going to be okay? IRS looks at travel and entertainment and marketing. They look at really the abused areas on tax returns. So IRS actually has about 350,000 sit-down audits, and they have 1.5 million match audits. You may say, what's a match audit? A match audit is if you get a W-2 or a 1099 as a source of income from a third party, the IRS computer system checks your tax return to make sure those W-2s and 1099s and third-party information are on there. IRS collects $12 billion of extra revenue because people supposedly forget to put that income on there. So there's a couple type of audits. IRS can send somebody to your house, or you have to go inside the IRS. And what are they going to look at? They're going to look at the records that you went ahead and gave your boss or your employer, and they're going to look to make sure those expenses went ahead and matched up to what was on the return. That's why you have to have nice records that the owner understands, the owner agrees with. The owner, by the way, is the one that signs off, not you. But there's heavy fines for tax preparers who don't give IRS the right information. They have accuracy penalties, negligence penalties, and fraud. So you have to be very, very careful in preventing that. Now, I will go ahead and I'll tell you, if somebody did not file a tax return and I was an agent, and let's say I'm talking to either one of you two cute girls I have on the screen, and you told me you never filed a tax return, I could tell you pretty much how much you make. I just have to find out how much rent or mortgage you have. As a general rule, if you have $1,000 rent payment or a mortgage payment, the ratio of your rent to your total expenses is about a third. So if you say pay for rent $1,000 a month, your income has to be about $3,000 a month. So these ratios have already been established. So if I were to go out, all I need to know, now there's exceptions, but all I need to do is find out what your cost of living is. Do you have a car payment? Yeah, what your electric bills are, food, and I could come up with your income. Now I'm going to tell you a very interesting case I had and how I solved the case. We have a lot of what's called Subway restaurants here in the United States. Do you guys have them there? Or sandwich shops, okay?
Yes, we do have
So I,
that.
I knocked on, I asked the guy, I said, hey, let me ask you something. How much income you make? He said, I don't really know. I don't have records. He says, I think they were destroyed by a flood. Oh, really? Oh, when was the flood? Well, I'm not sure, but I knew a flood came through here. I said, so I knew the guy was lying. So I says, I can have your income in about a week. He says, really? He says, how? I said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to come back and tell you what your income is. So I served a federal subpoena on 2 items that he sold in his store. What 2 items do you think he makes the most money on in his store? You want to take a guess? Sandwich. And his sandwich, all I had to do was get the bread sales.
Yes.
Cups, because people drink. You find out what the average sub cost and the average drink. You take away a 15% spoilage, and you can come up and determine how much. So I came back, I summoned the subpoena. I found out that year he sold 8,000 subs. I got a number on what the average sub cost. I got the cups that he sold. I knew his average cup was $1.50. I was able to come up with his total income for the year based on just those 2 figures. So IRS has what they call market specialization programs, where they have books and books on every industry. They have known where people cheat at. They understand how that industry works, if it's a technical industry, and they can find out where the cheating is. So when the auditor comes out, he has a checklist of things. So I'll give you another example. I came out to a laundromat, and I said, hey, I need to know your income. Guy says, well, I says, what are you going to do? Stay there all year and count quarters? Guy thought he was real cocky, and guy thought he was real smart. I says, no, all I got to do is find out 2 things, and I'll tell you how much you made. Really? He says, go do it. So what 2 things do you think I subpoenaed to get records for to find out what his income was? I subpoenaed the electric and the water bill.
Yep.
I found out what the average is for laundromats in that area. So I looked at his phone bill, his water bill, and I looked at his electric bill, and I was able to go ahead and I was able to back up into his income. So that's what happens now in the United States. We have laws if many people don't file. There's a law, a policy statement on the books, where if you don't file, I have people come in my office who've never filed. IRS says just file the last 6 years and you'll be okay. The bulk of my work are people that are self-employed. You are probably not going to get any work as bookkeepers for people that have W-2 income that are on salary. The bulk of your work is going to be for people who are self-employed. And one of the big problems for people who are self-employed is they don't make estimate tax payments. In the United States, you are required to make 4 quarterly estimate tax payments. So when you file your United States income tax return, you have paid your tax at the end of the year. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So at the end of the day, are there any questions you have? Let me open that up for questions. And if you want to go over the slide later, you can. There's some statistics on there. But 80% of the people in the United States have W-2 wages, and 20% are all self-employed. So
Okay.
you want to ask me any questions, or I'll take any questions from anybody that you have?
Okay, let me just quickly check the comment box. Yeah. Hmm. Okay, there's a question here. Okay, it says, what are the pros and cons of using the company for non-business expenses, like adding personal expenses to the business?
That's a great question, and the answer is that's what IRS is looking for. So for me, I have a personal credit card and I have a corporate credit card. I have a company business account and I have a personal bank account. So the problem is for bookkeepers is when you see an expense, how do you know what's personal and how do you know what's business? And what most business owners want to do is wrap their personal expenses in there so it looks like they have more expenses. At the
Mhm.
end of the day, as a bookkeeper, you're going to have a very tough job isolating what's business and what's personal. Because what do people do? Every time they go out to eat, they write it off as a business expense, but they're taking their kids to McDonald's. So there is no advantage. A matter of fact, there's a disadvantage, and it can kick out bad audit numbers. Now, you can do it. You could do it softly or moderately, but when it's abused, you're going to have a real problem. I don't think there's a business owner who hasn't used his corporate card on dinners with his friends and dinners here or doing a couple things, but you've got to do it within reason. You know that we have an expression here that pigs live and hogs get slaughtered. That's our expression for tax returns. So I think as long as you do everything within the color of the robe, you know, you want to present a fair. If IRS comes in and does an audit, IRS is going to want to make sure everything is just where it belongs. Business is business and personal is personal. So for me to tell you or give you any other advice would be wrong of me to do that. Now, the owner is still going to come along and say, well, I want that over in this category. That's up to you as far as your own person to make a determination what you want to do. But that's a very good question. And that area is abused for everyone that's self-employed, everybody. I don't know if we have any saints here in the United States that really tote the plumb line there.
Yep, right there. Yep. Thank you for that, Michael. There's another question here. Are Filipinos doing freelancers job stationed in the Philippines but are paid in dollars will not be subject to Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act sooner or later?
Yeah, it's hard to answer that question because what happened many years ago, United States only had reciprocity in about 4 countries. And
Mm.
then all the countries got together and they came up and they made a treaty. And then 88 countries joined the treaty. Liechtenstein was the only one that really held out, where you can dump your money there. But what all the states and the countries were finding out is these people were dumping in other states or countries, and they weren't paying their tax. So they all got together and says, "Hey, if everyone reports, we're all going to make more money." So what the United States did, they said, hey, if you have money in foreign accounts, if you don't tell us, we're going to go against you criminally. So if you are doing freelance jobs and are not paying dollars, you're going to have to check your own laws and compliance issues to find out how much you are to report, when you're to report it, because this is an ever-changing industry. Anytime a government can find a way to squeeze a nickel out of you, they are going to make you squeeze that nickel anytime they can. So, yeah, I want to tell you too, in the United States, what they're doing is they're holding the tax preparers responsible for checking out the tax returns. So they're checking on all the credits. And if you sign your name on a return and that tax return is wrong, you can get hit with the fraud and accuracy penalty. So the IRS has really stepped up their game to making the people who sign returns responsible and penalizing them very heavily. And they announce that they bring them to jail every now and then just to make a splash. So you want to keep up with your compliance in the Philippines,
Yep.
okay?
Mhm. All right. All right. Thank you for that, Michael. How about this one? If a subcontractors or contractors are paid through PayPal, Stripe, and other payment gateways, are we going to include the payments when preparing 1099s?
Well, what I think is going to start happening, and in some of them are, you're going to start getting 1099s. And I don't know what the laws are over there regarding that, but here's what you have to understand. By the way, that's a very good question. If you get a 1099 and drop it off and you forget it, well, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. IRS is not going to catch that the first year because they're always working 18 months behind. They can't process right now. So if you forget that 1099 through Vimo, PayPal, Zelle, whatever that you're doing, you're going to get audited 2 years from now. But you know what the problem is? IRS is going to add on a bunch of penalties and interest. So when you pull up IRS transcripts in this country, they will let you know all your W-2s, 1099s, and any third party that reports. IRS will give you a list of every single reporting agency, and that's where they do this match-up program. And the reason it's so effective is because you don't need an auditor for the IRS to strike. They'll say, here's all the 1099s. You don't have them. We're assessing you this much tax. You fight us if you want to fight us, but here's the 1099s, here are the K1s, here's what PayPal said. So this is an area, I think, because banks are becoming very, very active, this reporting is going to go sky high because people are no longer writing me checks. They pay me by credit card. Today I had 3 Zelle payments. This is nothing that existed a couple years ago. So this is an area, remember, IRS and the taxing agencies always lag behind. When they find out there's a group of income sitting here, when they find out it's existed for a while, that's when they start putting the filters on to go ahead and make sure they capture all the money. It's never right away, but probably within 5 years, you're going to see a heavy demand in this area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what they do.
All right. So another interesting question here. If the client doesn't provide any invoices and receipt from last year, what kind of support should we provide when IRS audited by my client's business?
You can't. You can't provide any. The answer is none. Now, in saying that, there's a Cohan rule. So, but that first of all, that's a good question. You can't make stuff up, and if you make stuff up, you become part of the problem. It's the owner's job and the client's job to provide you with that. So the two things you can always look for checks and credit cards. The nice thing about having a business credit card is you don't have a lot of work to do or a QuickBooks file. If they just give you their credit cards business, all they got to do is put a yellow underline. What I do when people come in, I just have them put a yellow underline, and I'll know what it is. You must train your client. You must train whoever you're doing work for to give you the information you need to make your job simple. Do not let the tail wag the dog. You must keep control and you must establish
Right.
that. See, you guys know what I'm talking about. You know when the
Yes.
tail wags the dog, don't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you darn right you do. Don't let it happen. That's why that very first initial interview is very, very, very important to establish that. And it's not that you're coming on strong. You want to say, I want to give you the best service. I want to give you very, very accurate records. So in doing that, let's set this up. But you cannot self-create. If he said do what you did last year, that's up
Mm-hmm.
to him. So if he wants to say do that, you say, okay, give me an electronic transmission that you're saying everything is the same and I have your permission to do exactly what we did, but you're signing the tax returns. I just want you to know. But technically, you can't do that. Okay.
All right. Okay. Good. Ready for e-commerce questions? Okay. I have because some are asking about Amazon, eBay, and Shopify. So this question here, um, how do Amazon, eBay, Shopify, and other marketplace remit their sales tax?
I don't do anything in the sales tax area, none. And I want to stay out of it. I'm going to tell you what's happened in the United States. Some states here do different things on sales tax. A couple years ago, it wasn't the state of Florida didn't require sales tax to be taxed. So many times that's done on a state by state basis and not necessarily federal. So you're going to have to find out exactly how Amazon reports. And oh yeah, the other thing you've got to know, if you're doing bookkeeping, you also have to know what states do in the sales tax area. There's 50 states. There is not just one general rule of law as to how that goes. So you're going to have to be. You guys do state sales tax works for like Arizona, California, Florida. Do you?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
actually, it's per state. Yep, you're right there. Yep.
Yeah, so that's why you need to find out. That you guys handle every now certain. You guys handle every state, or I mean, pretty much.
Just a certain state, but not every all of the state. Yeah.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Let me ask you a couple questions. Your average bookkeeper that you have. I'm going to turn the tables on you now. It's my turn. How many? How many? How many clients does the average bookkeeper have?
Um, Average, Miss Alfie.
Can I tell by what type of car they drive?
Oh, okay.
Oh, can you please
I
tell
don't, I don't, I don't have yet new car. Okay.
I'm asking for a friend. I'm not asking for the
Not
IRS
yet.
agent. So if I
Okay.
was an IRS agent, I'd drive by your house and see what car you drove. No, I'm asking, what are the fees you charge? I'm just curious. What are your average fees, and how many average clients do you have?
All right. Who wanna answer first?
Basically, Michael, I have monthly retainers, 10 clients. Okay, so part time. So with special projects, sometimes I can charge average $1,500. So most of the jobs are into cleaning up the books, and then after that, monthly retainers fees. So more or less in a month, I can have two or three special projects aside from the monthly retainer clients average of 10. So only part time.
Now, one of the things that's problematic, I'm guessing, is cleaning up books. Because when you're picking up books that are getting cleaned up from somebody else, there's nothing worse than having a mop and cleaning to go through the books and records. It's almost impossible. You can spend 3 times or 4 times the amount of times trying to reconstruct what's in those old books from bad bookkeepers. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to take. I'll give you some. I'll give you some a little Um, I tell you what, why don't you go through the slideshow and I'll run through it real quick. And
Okay,
this
sure.
way you can kind of see how someone who has my job, you can kind of see what we do and how we. I've covered some of it, but let me just go through it with you.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Okay, so that's who I am. By the way, on this first page, I worked a narcotic trafficking program. You want to say, well, what's that? Well, during the days of the cocaine cowboys and
Mm-hmm.
all the pot smugglers, IRS would go ahead and they would seize the drugs. So you may ask how they came up with tax deficiencies on that. This is very interesting. If a kilo at that time sold for 55,000, don't think I know what a kilo price is because I sniff coke. I had to know what a kilo price is because we had to make a tax assessment. So let's say someone we downloaded 3,000 kilos. You go ahead and you set up what the street value of those kilos were, and that's how you'd come up with the tax assessment. So if a kilo sold, say, I don't know, $3,000, and you got 3,000 of them and it came up, I don't know, $9 million, you would set that person up on a $9 million tax assessment. At that time, you would run that through the Treasury Department as a jeopardy or termination assessment. That assessment was created in one day. You'd go down to the courthouse, you'd file a federal tax lien, and that afternoon you could go seize boats, houses, bank accounts, and anything you wanted. It was kind of excited because we went into homes of all the drug dealers in South Florida and we kind of learned what that lifestyle was. And it was amazing the amount of how much money. I worked the Operation Greenback case in 1978. Goes back a long time ago. They had made 104 $400,000 cash deposits every day. So
Wow.
it's just phenomenal. Just keep go to the next slide if you would.
Okay.
So my expertise is in IRS and state resolution. The offer and compromise program is a real big program. That's where you settle your tax debt in the United States. Yeah, there's about 78,000 offers filed a year. The average settlement is about 16,000. The other program is the non-filers, where people haven't filed in a long time. If you're going through an IRS audit, we do representation, and we here handle on everything but criminal matters. And you can see a list of everything down there. I've seized bank accounts, wages, boats, yachts, cars, planes. Now that funeral home and racehorses, I'll tell you a funny story. Well, it's not so funny. I guess there wasn't funny at the time, but they're funny now. So we seized this funeral home. Well, the person that I made the seizure with, this is back in hell, I don't know, maybe 1975. There was two bodies in there that were being embalmed, and they were waiting on Monday. We had to seize that. Well, we couldn't keep the body on the premises. We didn't know what to do with them. So my buddy who made the seizure took care of the bodies. He goes on vacation for 2 weeks. On Monday morning, the people come in. There's no such thing as cell phones and computers then. Everything was dial-up phones, right? So the owners come in, they redeem the property, and they wanted to have the funeral on Tuesday for the two bodies because the place was under seizure. Well, my manager comes to me, says, "Where are the bodies?" He says, "I don't know where the bodies is. I was just along for the ride here. I helped the guy." The guy says, "Well, they want to have the funeral. Where are the bodies?" He says, "I don't have the bodies. Contact the employee, that guy I was with." He says, "Well, he's on vacation. He's up in the mountain for 2 weeks." Well, I says, "Gee," I says, "at the end of the day," I says, there's nothing that I can do about that. Nothing. So anyway, everyone's all mad at me because they wanted to have a funeral. They're asking me for the bodies. Well, I live in Fort Lauderdale. Nobody would take the bodies, and the guy had to go. The guy sent the bodies to Miami. I never called them, so they didn't have the funeral for 2 weeks. That was my funeral. I'll tell you one more. Funeral home. This is really bad. I love this one. So this guy, he goes ahead, and we go in the funeral home. We went to make a seizure. He didn't have any electric. He couldn't pay his bills, and we wanted to pay all the, we wanted to go in and we want to just tell him, hey, we're going to have to sell these coffins and caskets. So we walk in. He didn't pay his light bill. So we walk in and can't find him. And there were like 30 coffins that he had on display. Real spooky room. But, as the curtain comes in, you see that crack of light come through the curtain. And it kind of lit this real dull room with all these coffins. So my buddy and I walk in to see where this guy is. We can't find him. Then all of a sudden, the top of this coffin starts opening. My buddy and myself got so scared, we went and both got stuck in the door frame at the same time getting out. We ripped our pants and pulled the door frame. The guy was sleeping in the coffin. So that's enough for that. Go to the next slide, if you would, please. These are true stories. You can't make stuff like this up. Okay, so I've been shot at. I've had knives thrown at me. My car device. Oh yeah, I was trying to burn me alive once. He tried to throw gas on me and throw a match on me. That was another story. Let's go to another. I'm not going to sleep tonight. Go to the next slide. So what happens when you file your tax return? I already covered this. Every return goes through the process. Every tax return is graded for an audit. I told you every score is given a diff number, and the ones with the highest scores, IRS goes ahead. The IRS goes ahead and audits the tax return. Next slide. So when you owe taxes, IRS sends you 5 letters. If you don't answer that 5 letters, which is 6 months apart, they will start seizing your bank account, your wages, and put a federal tax lien on all your property. Okay? That's the area that I got involved with. I was involved with the seizure arm of the United States government. Okay, go ahead. So what can IRS do? They can literally go in and take your entire bank account. I've seized bank accounts with 80,000, 6,000, millions of dollars. You go and you try to get your money out. If you didn't respond to the IRS bill, your money is gone. You can go to the next slide. So how if you owe money to IRS, how do you go ahead and resolve the debt? IRS can either put you in hardship, they can put you in a payment agreement, they can give you a settlement, and a very interesting fact that you should know, IRS has only 10 years to collect the money. So if you know how to dodge them enough, after 10 years, the debt actually goes away by statute. Mm-hmm. Next slide. So these are just things. IRS can take your pensions. They can look at anything. And I want to tell you another thing. It's important to know that IRS knows what a national standard is. So if I were to come to Manila and I would come to you guys have counties or cities or boroughs? So every city or borough in the United States has a national standard. That is what the rent is, what a car payment would be. So when IRS goes into an area and wants to collect money in every county in the United States, you can look up the national standards. So there's no question about how much, in fact, you make to live in that area. Now, they're not always accurate, but it's a good rule of thumb, okay?
Okay.
Next. Okay, so if IRS wants to do record checks, and let's say you guys owe tax, IRS has a very powerful search engine. They go to the courthouse, they'll check your car records. They will look at your credit reports. They'll look at your credit applications to see what assets you put on. If you have a home and you have an insurance rider, they'll check what's there. IRS, if they find out you're lying on that, they can refer your case to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. Next slide. So I want to tell you, and this is very helpful in the bookkeeping industry, very helpful. And I want you to understand that if I'm an agent and I'm coming to look at you personally or the records that you're maintaining, the bank statement, the tax returns, the financial statement, and the cost of living have to have a common thread through that. And let me tell you what that means. If you have a mortgage or rent for $1,000 a month, okay, that means you have to make about $3,000 a month, okay? So your bank statement should have a $3,000 deposit. Your tax return should show $36,000 in income. The financial statement you give me should show $36,000 and all your expenses bear that out. Your cost of living should say you only have $3,000. So if one of those is out of kilter, that's how IRS knows you're lying. They're going to look at what does not make sense. So if your tax return says that you make $30,000 a year and you've got $5,000 a month in deposits, they know there's a problem. So those are the cross references an agent looks at to know if you're lying. Does that make sense? Okay, next. So these are the audit statistics. They've changed. IRS only audits 0.04% of all the tax returns in the United States. I've told you 350,000 returns are audited. 1.2 million people get caught up in the matching program. And 71%, very interesting, of all audits that take place are done by mail. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, go ahead. You know, just so you know, there's a fear. They say people hate to go to the mailbox here and look and know there's a letter from IRS. They start shuddering. There's a fear in them. So let me tell you the tax returns that are most likely audited. The people who are self-employed. Bookkeepers do what type of people? Self-employed people. People with businesses. People with this right here are the people you deal with. So the returns that you're doing are the people that IRS is going to target for an audit. Okay? And then there's that FBAR reporting that somebody brought up. IRS is very big and careful now of looking at FBARs now. So you want to keep up with the requirements. That's not me in jail on the slide. That's some poor soul. Next one, please. So these are the reasons you get audited. I just want you to know, very interesting. I already talked about the DIF program because your return is too high in an area. And that's why as a bookkeeper, you can go to your client and say, man, you got a lot of expenses here. You got to be careful. IRS random samples, anyone who's taking credits, like the energy credit, the child care credit, the credits that are available. IRS, by the way, keeps a list of every tax practitioner and find out how many times they're taking the credits. If you are going ahead and having credit after credit on your clients, IRS is going to come out and audit all your tax returns. IRS does what's called a taxpayer compliant measurement program. That's the worst audit in the world because they audit everything on your tax return, including the birth certificates of your children. Anytime there is a number written on that tax return, the taxpayer or the National Research Program, they audit every single thing. And then they have special projects. Like in Florida, agriculture, they'll run projects on dairy farmers, on orange growers, in resort areas, on hotels, on tips, on gas stations, people who sell beer, where anytime there's an abuse going on in one area, the national office will put out a special project. Okay, next slide. So I already gave you my examples of cash businesses and how they come out at gross revenue. They just summons information on the sandwich shop for cups and bread, and the laundromat for the electric and water bill. Next. So we don't need this. I do want to tell you about the Cohan rule. I think that's really important. Somebody asked a great question. What happens if you don't have books and records for certain business expenses? In 1930, a judge came along named Judge Learned Hand. He came out again and ruled in the Cohan. And that is saying if you can reconstruct your books and records by reconstruction, we'll give you some of the expenses. So let's say somebody puts in tile for a living. He doesn't have any records. Well, if you can go and pull a record up of where he purchased the tile, how many jobs he had, you can do a reconstruction by looking at the clients he had and try to show IRS by reconstructive records. He had to have this much in expenses because he had to have grout, he had to have tile, he had to have certain tools in the industry, and IRS does allow for reconstruction as long as it's well documented. Okay.
All right.
Next. So how do you prepare tax returns with no records? You can pull the IRS transcripts. IRS has a record of all your income and expenses. You can pull credit reports. Everybody has a certain amount they may spend on a credit card, so they know how much you're spending on credit. You can take a current financial statement. I already told you about the rent basis or the mortgage basis. That's a good, and you look at bank statements. So it's really easy. But I want to caution bookkeepers here who are doing this, be really careful. Don't prostitute yourself for a client or someone because, they never want to go down for it. They're going to always blame you all the time. They're going to blame everyone but themselves. So when you start someone seeing CD, and here's the big balance, you want the income, you need the money, you got to ask yourself, how deep do you want to go down this hole? But one thing you don't want to do is keep a shovel with you, because as they're going down, he's going to give you or she's going to give you a shovel, and you're going down that same road with that person. So be real careful. The other thing I did want to bring up to you is a little about marketing. When I left IRS a long time ago. My wife actually passed away the day I left, and I started with nothing. And I want to tell you for marketing, anytime you have the opportunity, market. Anytime you go in a place, anytime you can put a card in, anytime you can go in flowers, anytime you can see accountants or attorneys, always keep opportunities to market with you. You can make as much money as you want every single day. So if you're next to a car and you see if you're going around and someone's self-employed and you see a truck, leave a flyer. Hey, I'm a good bookkeeper, quality. Here's my experience. Look for self-employed people and leave flowers. You are your best marketer. You want to explode in that. Every day you should at least go to 3 people or drop 3 flyers out and let people know what you do. You must market your industry. You must market yourself every single day. I send a newsletter out every month. I don't give a crap whether they read the newsletter or not. I just want my name in front of people every single day. If you're doing John Jones or a Filipino's tile company, I'd call 4 other tile companies and say, hey, I do a lot of tile work. I understand your industry. The whole world down there, you can pick up every day, learn to market, and you can make all the money that you need if you can get rid of the crap clients and only bring in really nice clients. Okay. That's my little spiel for marketing.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So
That's all I got. Do I have any more slides left? Okay, yeah, and your business is a marketplace. You know, the other thing too, I want to tell you, I want you to understand this. Everyone at you that are hearing me today, create a marketplace in what you do. So if you're doing like I do this work, okay, so you should market other services and get referral fees. So down here, if someone has an immigration, I have an attorney I refer out. Someone needs credit repair, you should have a bunch of services that you can refer to and they can pay you referral fees. When you're a bookkeeper, you should have three or four other industries that you're linked to that you revenue share with. And once you get that base, you may want to have a bank you're connected with. A banker is a great revenue source for you because when you go on a bank and someone's opening an account and you know the owner of that bank real well, say, hey, I do book. Could you do you mind sending me? So what do? You put on little forums, little Zoom things. Find little ways to get in front of people that can get you work, and you'll be busy for the rest of your life. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that's all I got. You guys can ask me any other questions you want.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that these are all done. We're that's just for the presentation. So that's me, and that when we were in Las Vegas, that's the booth I was at. So that was our firm there. Yeah. So do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
All right. Sure. Hello?
Yes.
Questions, Mishari?
Yes. I think you have a question, right?
Yes. Okay. Michael, speaking of meals and entertainment, right? Deductions or expenses. Do you have any idea or tip on how are we going to consider that as a reasonable meals and entertainment in a business?
I didn't.
Because
I didn't.
meals, okay, okay, I repeat. Meals and entertainment, okay, back to deductions, right? As we all know, it's eligible for 50% deduction, okay? So how can we say, or
I,
when can we say,
I think they changed that this year. I think because
mhm,
so many people had COVID, I think they're allowing 100% now to help the
oh,
rest of the industry. I think they just changed the tax law in that area. You want to look. So
I
remember the code changes all the time. I'd rather you check on that and have me tell you. But what was your question about? I missed that.
okay. My question is, when can you say that certain transaction is a reasonable meals and entertainment? Is there any, let's say, threshold amount?
No,
It's a
there isn't. I think the word reasonable is very,
it,
very important. And they're not. I had a client that I took to Joe's Stone Crab in Miami. That was an $800 American bill that night at Joe's. He was a real big client, and he had that sort of expectation. But my average meal is probably going to be around $100 out. So there isn't a threshold, but IRS is looking for reasonable. You can't have $800 meals and $800 bottles of Dom Perignon. I think the whole word is reasonable every time. You got to remember the auditor who's coming out has an expectation of what that auditor has when he goes to dinner or she goes to dinner. So you got to be reasonable and understand what I told you. Pigs live and hogs get slaughtered. So just be reasonable and don't. And they really need to be documented. I went here and I talked about this and just write a little paragraph note so they know what it was. IRS won't question it as long as it's documented.
mhm,
Okay.
I see. Okay, thank you. Okay, another question. Okay, I have a single member LLC client. Okay, what could be the requirements for him to be eligible for S corp registration?
Yeah,
from single member LLC going to S Corp.
yeah. I would always talk to whoever's, listen to me, this is very important, is whoever is doing the accounting work for that person makes the decision. And I'll tell you the reason I don't give that answer. You have to
Okay.
understand what the person did in the past, what the person's going to do in the future, and what the expectations are. They literally need to sit down with the accountant and figure out which is the best tax remedy to go through the situation they have. Were they a Schedule C? Were they Schedule C? Were they a full corp? That's an answer that's too vague and too big that I don't. I need to know more to give an answer to.
Okay. So we'll have to dig this deeper. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Mhm. Okay. So there's a question here. An Amazon seller has two LLC companies. How about an Amazon seller use company A's account to receive sales, paper purchases, and expenses of company B? Will it affect filing taxes?
Once again, it will, but you have to ask the person who's going to be doing the. Here's where I'm having a little issue. Just and help me with this. Are you guys doing tax returns or bookkeeping?
I think some of the members here are doing tax preparation
Tax
as well.
support. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but no
generally, it's all in
tax.
bookkeeping. Yes.
Yeah,
So you have people doing both.
yeah.
Okay, so once again, I do not do anything in the tax prep work. I strictly do the IRS representation. It's a good question, but let me tell you, when you have a question like that,
Mhm.
and you're going to set your client up on that answer, make sure you keep electronic transmissions on where you got your answer from. Don't say I asked somebody and the somebody said this. Look that answer up, cut and paste it, print it, and keep it either in the electronic file of that person. I can't tell you how many people have come in and said, I called my accountant and my accountant said to do this. I says, well, did he send you an email on that you can? He says, no. Don't ever do that. If you're asking a question, don't take my word. If you're doing a tax return, research it and keep the answer in your file. You always must pretend that return's going to be audited, okay? And don't take chances. Go ahead.
Yep.
Is it necessary to keep books and records? It's actually 3 years. Wait, if it's necessary and possible to keep up to 2 or 3 years behind if receipts, invoices, checks, and organized. Hmm. I'm not sure. Could you help me with that, please? The question.
Okay, is it necessary and possible to keep up the books 2 to 3 years behind if receipts and invoices checks are denied?
You have to
So,
keep records for 3 years.
yeah.
You know that. You have to keep records for 3 years, but I'm not sure what that means. Can you help me with that? You have to
Um,
keep all the records, whether they're organized or not. So my
Yes.
question is this: how did they prepare a tax return with the unorganized records? Does that make sense?
yes, right.
How did you do how was the tax return done? So people make up returns. If they use last year's return and they make it up. So I think it would be wise to try to put those back records in order to go ahead and move forward. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people don't want to pay the money. They just say, keep the old records, let's start new from there. So,
Yeah.
once again, have the person send you an email confirming that I want the two records there. And now, if the person doesn't want to go ahead and do that, then you send that email out and say, let me have this understanding, and then you keep that in your records. You can't document enough to keep yourself out of trouble, okay?
Okay, right. There's a question here. It says it's about IRS EA exam preparation. They're asking if how long to prepare for it and some review materials they can visit.
Yeah, I would tell people First of all, if they can get their EA, they should. I would go ahead and go on Facebook groups. My Facebook group, I think, Sherry, that's how I found you, has over 1,300 people. I would look, there is a Facebook group out for the EA exam, and they can ask questions in that forum. I think there's 3 or 4 parts. I think there's over 300 questions. And if you can get your EA, you can make a lot more money because you can get transcripts and represent. And it's worth the study time and material. And if you can go for it, go for it. But I think it's best to go on the forums, the Facebook forums themselves, and there'll be like US Tax Pros, EA Forum. You'll find they'll help you all along because you'll find people who have just taken the exam or people who will give you they will tell you the study course and material that you need to have. So I would encourage that very much. And there's very specific courses that 3 or 4 people have that they walk you through the tests and they walk you through everything and prepare you for that. My guess it'll take a year to prepare for the exam, even if you have another job. So go ahead. And once again, I don't. It's a great question. I don't do any tax returns. As a matter of fact, I hate to do tax returns. You know why? I'd rather take I would actually, honestly, about doing it. Let me tell you, the last time I prepared a tax return, I was at IRS. I'd rather take this scissors and poke myself in the eye than to do a tax return. You know why? Because IRS, I am telling you, I'm going to poke myself. Nah, no, the reason I don't want to do that is IRS makes you responsible. I don't want to look through other people's records. I would rather look at your problem, call IRS, and work a deal out. I make $5,000 a case. How much do you make doing a stinking return? So you tell me. It's either this scissors or $5,000. So you tell me. Am I doing the right thing? Yes, I'm doing the right thing. You guys do the tax returns. I hate them. They change them every year. They change the laws. They change this. Get your EA and represent people. That's my best advice for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But I want to tell you, you have to understand this. This is very important to hear that. I say that, but everybody has a gift. Many people love to work with the books and records. It's soothing. They understand them. I am not a type of person that can sit down and look at. No, I hate Sudoku. You guys, I hate crossword puzzles. You guys must love Sudoku. I hate Sudoku. I see Sudoku, I run from it. I don't walk, I run. I burn it up. I hate Sudoku. So, but you have to understand the Lord gives everybody a gift. And for all of you who do bookkeeping and do tax returns and who do it well, you have a special gift. I could never do what you do. So it's more credit to you because your industry is needed for everyone that's self-employed. And I think there's 35 million self-employed people. They need 35 million of you people. Okay. Is there a prescription for records? Yeah, 3 years. You got to keep records. That person looks like a dummy on their thing. I don't know if that's them or Freddie or Chucky. But at the end of the day, you have to keep records for 3 years. Who is that? Who is that? I want to see her face. Who is she?
This one, the one who
I'm
asked
just
question.
teasing. I'm just teasing. I like her hair, whoever she is. You have to keep them. And
Yeah.
by the way, always keep them on the cloud. Don't make sure they can't get burned. Make sure the owner knows how you keep them. But yeah, you have to. If IRS, by the way, IRS can go back 4 years if there's 25% omission of income. And if there's fraud, they'll go back 6 years.
Okay. Someone says here, from Sherry, she hates Sudoku.
Very good. Tell her I want to go on a date with her. Good for
Okay.
her.
Yeah. Do you have any probably some resources that these people can visit for US tax preparer or someone that you can refer to us for consultations or
If you want to refer the guy who I have next to me, Tim Hart, he's a CPA, and you can give him my contact information. And you can probably make a referral fee too as well. We're allowed to revenue share with that. So if anyone has an IRS problem, I have a whole host of former IRS agents and tax preparers, and yeah, we pay 10% out on any. I do want to tell you one other thing that probably really it was on my notes. I didn't tell you. Be familiar with the United States tax return. Look at it. The most important page to you is Schedule C. How IRS is going to look at your income and how IRS is going to allow expenses. But you have to understand this. Let me tell you, this is really important. I'm glad that person asked that question. I hope that was the person who didn't like Sudoku. It wasn't, but I wished it was. So at the end of the Schedule C, it says how much income you make and how much net profit you make. So the CPA comes in with a return from a client he just had. The guy made $90,000 in gross receipts, right? So I'm looking at his return, right? I'm getting down at the bottom of it, and it says net profit, $4,000.
okay.
I'm thinking to myself, that's the only income. So I look at the guy. He says, hey, how'd you live on $4,000 a month? I says, in Broward County where we live, food alone is $7,000 a month. I says, how'd you live? How'd you pay your insurance? How'd you pay this? Looks at me, says, guess I lied. I says, I guess you did. So I threw the tax return back to him, and these returns have to make sense. If a person has one business and they're not showing they have enough money to subsist where they're living in their zip code to pay bills, it's a fraudulent tax return, and it's going to get audited. It has to make sense. If you show me a tax return from any of you want to contact me, say, hey, review this. Does this make sense? I'll have a consultation fee. I'll look at that and I'll say the return is going to get audited. They don't make your tax return. I have some people come in and they show me 3-4 losses in a row. This is their only business. I said, did you win the lottery? Oh, no. I said, you have any savings? No. I said, well, how can you have losses for 3 years in a row? How do you pay your bills? He says, I just do. No, you just lie. You're Pinocchio. So this stuff has got to make sense, okay? Don't do stuff that don't make sense. It's not worth the client, okay?
All right. Okay. Okay. We still have questions. Abby said she's Chucky.
Oh, man, I'm glad. Is that the Sudoku player? Send her a Sudoku set for me, would you?
Yes, this
I think
one.
you should I think you should have giveaways, Sudoku game boards. I think that'd be excellent for you guys. Sudoku or crossword puzzles.
Yeah. I think that's it. Because some of the questions are really tax related, so probably we'll try to keep in touch with Timothy Hart, uh, for probably consultation
No, I
or
can. I can do that. You can give them. And if you want me to get you a CPA for the next one, I'm happy to do that. And you could ask those tax questions specifically. I didn't know exactly you wanted to. You really needed a comedian tonight because it's early in the morning and all of you probably hadn't had your coffee. So I figured out as the next best. So
yeah.
anyway, if you want an accountant for the next one, you can just let me know and I'll have an accountant here for you. He's much smarter. I'm a
Wow.
single man and I only have so many gifts and that's it. Okay.
Yeah, we
So I
really
want
love.
to say a prayer over all you guys before I leave. So if you don't mind. So Lord, I thank you very much for this time that we've had together. I ask you to bless the ministries of these two ladies. I ask you to put a hedge of protection, Father, over everyone that's listening here. Teach them patience. If any of them have worries, I ask that you turn them over to the care of really our Heavenly Father. I always, for all of you, seek His wisdom and His guidance and none of man, because only God can reveal the pure truth to you. So now, all of you listening, the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face and countenance and grace be upon you.
May He always give you wisdom and peace, freedom from angst and worry as you seek His face and glorify His name. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
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 Thank you so much, Michael.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye. All right. So ayun, Miss Alfie, very very ang dami nating natutuhan from Mr.
Oo,
Michael.
parang
And
kulang pa nga sa akin eh. Ang dami pa mga
yes,
tanong.
I
Yeah.
think that
But,
will be part two, 'di ba? So yun na.
yes.
So we'll see. With CPA naman, it's more on
Yes.
taxation naman ang pag-uusapan talaga natin. So at least ngayon, meron tayong idea how IRS works, okay, yung regulations, okay.
Mhm.
So, ang dami kong natutuhan actually na hindi ko pa alam. Sobra,
Yeah,
nice.
lalo na yung pag mag-reconstruct ng expenses para may guide kung ano yung estimated income nila. So, at least may idea na tayo. So, ang kagandahan din, nag-share din si Michael yung significance ng work ng bookkeeper. So, ibig sabihin, napaka-importante talaga siya. Okay?
Yes, mention niya doon about marketing your services, okay?
So,
Sabi niya doon, do not prostitute, sabi niya, yung services mo just to get client. Oo, no? Kasi you have to know your value kasi. At saka, if you're going into trouble just to get client, ay naku, wag na.
oo.
Diba? So, if you have any question, you can email us or message us. So, ayan, thank you so much, Miss Alfie.
Thank you, Miss Shari. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today.